Today, we are talking about transparency. Transparent leadership means leading with openness and honesty. I am talking with Amber Hurdle of Amber Hurdle Consulting. She helps leaders confidently define and position their value so they can maximize their influence, focus, and results. She is the author of the Bombshell Business Woman and host of the Bombshell Business Podcast. I know Amber from being involved in the Velvet Machete Leadership Academy during COVID. Her course and the amazing members gave me invaluable insight and support when I rebranded my business from Camaletti Consulting to Spark Your Mindset, as well as launching this podcast, Snack Leadership. Get ready to hear what transparency is all about. Hi, Amber. I am so excited to have you on today and talk about transparency.
I am thrilled to be here, both because of the topic and because I love you to death.
Oh, I love you too. And when I thought of transparency, I was like, it has to be Amber.
Might be my MO.
So let's start with what really made you embrace this leadership skill of choice being transparency, because I just read your book, and as I was reading the history that you shared, I was like, wow, that must have really been a big thing for you to come out and talk about that. Like, was that always something you were totally open about when you talk about the foundation of how your transparency started, or was that something you had to lean into over time?
Well, when you waddle around small town Southern USA, visibly pregnant as a teenager, it's kind of transparent what's going on in your life. So I had the option at the time to feel shame, which I'm not saying I never felt, but I had the option to feel shame or just to own my situation and look for the good in it. Because as my mom said when I told her that I was pregnant, she was disappointed in my choices, but a baby coming into the world is never a bad thing. That's something to celebrate. That's love. That's, an amazing thing. And so that's my mom, thank God, hardwired my brain into how we were going to approach this. So as I continued, I've talked about this from stage, and the people who were at the Vacation Rental Women's Summit heard me talk about 1999 and how I took Prince very seriously that year. And I made a lot of poor choices then. And that came from just a lot of the trauma and that sort of thing. And so I just feel like the evolution of Amber has very much been attached to, or maybe being a teen mom gave birth to a lot of my philosophies, a lot of my learned behaviors, a lot of my belief system, certainly my commitment to personal branding, which turned into more expertise in all types of branding, all came from that. And so if it was that powerful to fuel not only my life and my ability to raise my daughter and eventually my son to who she is now, it also empowered my career and really my whole life philosophy. So what is there to hide? So I have to say I've always been pretty transparent about it because I'm proud of what we accomplished. And I say we because, trust me, my daughter was my sidekick, to say the least. And because what is there to hide? And I've remained in this area, I'm just outside of Nashville, and I've been here more on than off since I was 14 years old. So everybody knows my story anyways. There's nothing to hide. And, if I was to lean into any area a little bit more, was just some of the other poor decisions I made, which were plentiful. And having the comfort level to not just say that in a coaching consultation when somebody is feeling shame or they're embarrassed about part of their story, and sharing mine and being like, if I can do this, you can do this. Let me tell you how stupid I was. And being more open about that now that my kids are grown and they're not in a private school where people might say something or whatever. They're old enough to handle the information, and for me to be able to be transparent about that too.
Yeah.
Long answer. Sorry.
It's a great answer. And so when you are in different types of company cultures, what do you see when you see real transparency? What does it look like?
Well, it is, first of all, transparency has to come at a global level and then within the zip code of your department or your division. So on a global level, no matter the size of your company, transparency needs to look like, well, I have 3 areas that I think you must find success in order to have a whole company, a successful company. Is you have to have happy employees, you have to have happy customers, and you have to have a happy bank account. So if all of those things are happy, then you're swimming in the right direction. You'll get to where you want to go. But if you're not transparent with your team about the financials, and I'm not saying send everybody the P&L, I'm not saying that, but talk about how their efforts have helped you make this end result. So whether that's like quarterly or annual or however that looks for you, monthly, be sure that their success is tied to those 3 areas. Make sure that you're very transparent about the good and the bad, about the customer experience, and be transparent about the employee experience. And, some of the exercises I do with companies is really allowing the team, whether it be the leadership level or, whoever's in the room, to be transparent about what's working and what's not, and allowing the truth to be there. The Stockdale paradox, of course, confront the brutal facts, but never lose faith. When we're transparent about the good and the bad, then it's a safe place to innovate, and it's a safe place to problem solve, while not ignoring that we're doing all these amazing things. But here's the problem. And if leaders are not transparent, meaning you don't have to like put your guts on the table. You don't have to tell them everything about who you are as a person, because some of that, it needs to be at a comfort level. But for you to be able to say, I really screwed that up, and here's why. I owe you an apology, and I'm sorry that I created more work for you. If I would have listened to you, truly listened to you when you said this, I would have made a better choice, and then this wouldn't have been on you. That kind of transparency, people will follow you off a cliff with that kind of transparency.
Yes, that is so true. And I've watched it where it's gone to the other side too
Way
much.
Too far.
They're like, my bad, over and over and over again. And that is a whole different conversation of where now you're just like, they're owning too much that they don't know what they're doing, and you lose faith in them.
Yes, absolutely. And that's when you're coming from a posture of strength is when you report. Another reason why it's so important to keep an even scoreboard, to report the wins and how did we get to that win. And when you're praising your team for getting to that win, it's kind of assumed that you led it, but then to also take ownership of when you misstepped. And that doesn't mean you have to say my bad 100,000 times. And that is my go-to phrase that I ask leaders to use, but you don't want to appear like you don't have, your hands on the wheel. But if you make a wrong turn every once in a while, you need to say that so everybody's not fuming at you in the car.
I love that. Great analogy. Yeah. So we've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but when are other times where you have watched transparency not happening in cultures and it's just like eroded a culture?
Oh gosh. So many. So, for example, there could be somebody in senior leadership who might have fallen ill. And that is certainly something that has been experienced because of the global pandemic. And the organizations that are very transparent about that, you almost get this swell of pride, this swell of commitment, this, I'm going to go the extra mile because I'm doing it for so-and-so who's fighting, or cancer, or there's so many different things that happen, heart failure, we could go on. And so there's this almost extra commitment, and then there will always be fear. There's always going to be fear of the unknown. Who's going to take over? So, but it does give that transparency, gives you an opportunity to have an open and honest conversation, to understand where here is for your team. And obviously, you know what I believe, strong leaders have strong teams. And if you have strong teams, you have happy customers. So it's really obviously it's a humanitarian thing, but it's also a bottom line thing. So you have these people all swimming in the same direction with extra fervor. Or, for example, there was a hush-hush version of this where they didn't want to upset the employees. They didn't want to scare anybody. They just thought if we keep our mouths shut, then, everything will go according to plan. And then you lose that senior leader, that founder, that mentor, whatever. And then people feel cheated because they didn't get to say goodbye, because they didn't understand that someone they love and care about and they looked up to was suffering, and they didn't have an opportunity to even honor that, whether it is directly through conversation or through their work ethic or the extra that they could have put in. And then you have all of that uncertainty and all of that fear that now parachutes down on the entire team, and you don't have the time to process it, to have the conversation, to come up with a plan, to include the team in the plan. It's just like grief, loss, and change all at the same time. Not a recipe for success.
No. And I have worked with companies that have had an unexpected loss.
Yeah.
And having that conversation of, I recommend grief counseling.
Yes.
Like, I can support you, but the entire company needs to be able to have that counseling. I don't care how close or how distant they were from that employee, but that's essential for healthy teams.
Yeah. And there's the grief cycle, and then there's the change cycle. And a lot of times when we're grieving, we feel guilty for feeling things that are very natural. And when a grief counselor comes in and they say, like, this is what you can expect, and if you're feeling this way, it's very normal. You're not an evil person. Like, you're, that is a powerful thing for people to feel not only heard, but they feel normal, quote, not that any of us are. But the other side is the change cycle. And, I've gone over this.
I love that cycle.
Yeah. Viram and Tel, we did a series of webinars, and one of them, through the heat of the pandemic, we worked on the change cycle. And so that's a tool that not only helps the person moving through the change identify where they are and that it's going to be okay, but it helps the leaders understand where the individual team members are, or the team as a whole, and where they are, or the company, so that they know when to back off a little bit. They know when to lean into it. They know when to make sure they get somebody out of that danger zone and into, really integrating this change into what is now, as we all love to say, a new normal.
That change cycle that you shared during that time, that is what made me enroll in the Velvet Machete Leadership.
Oh, is that right?
Without a doubt, I was like, oh yeah, I know exactly where I'm at. I need some support.
Yeah, that's so true. And that it's a gauge of what do I need to add to the mix of the culture and to the employee experience based on where they are in the change cycle. Sometimes you need to let up on the operational expectation, and other times you need to add additional support or, tools and resources, and sometimes people just need a freaking vacation. So it's a useful tool, and that makes me happy. I'm so glad, because that's what brought you into my life.
Well, besides just obviously kind of having a crush on you, I was like, no, I need to learn from this woman. Yes. All right. So let's talk about your favorite leadership mentor. Let's talk about your favorite leadership mentor.
So I actually talk about this person in my book, The Bombshell Business Woman. And I just had Mexican food with her and her husband, and bourbon at her house and her kitchen counter just last week. And her name is Peggy Keel, and she is the owner of Sports Village Fitness Center in Lebanon, Tennessee. And she truly was the person who brought group fitness to Wilson County, which is a county that touches Davidson County, which is where Nashville is. And she saw Jane Fonda and was like, I can do that. And it turned into this passion of hers. And I would never be able to guess how many lives Peggy Keel has changed or literally saved through her work and her passion. And what I love about her, first of all, she's a very powerful female, a very big personality. And so it was easy for me to watch her and know what to do and what not to do. And the thing that I love most about Peggy, other than the fact that I learned so much business acumen through her, and also learned that what I do isn't because I feel like this is a job and I get paid for it. Like Peggy, what I do is literally an anvil on my chest every morning that if I don't set an intention to make sure that that's the point of my day, the anvil doesn't come off my chest. And that's how Peggy is. But the thing I love most about Peggy, who is also ADD like I am, also a big personality like I am, she was very transparent with me about her struggles, about her experience as a female business owner in small town Southern USA, about the missteps that she made in her relationships, whether it was personal or professional. She took responsibility, and she was the very first person to introduce me to personal development and took me to conferences and gave me, I think I started with the DISC profile like most people do as you get into psychoanalytic tools. And she, to this day, not only checks on me and makes sure that I'm okay. And this is 21, 22 years later from when I started working for her. She still to this day tells me stories, that art of telling a story.
Yeah.
Tells me stories that are vulnerable, shows the good and the bad that I can then use to contemplate where do I fit into that story and how can I learn from this in a way that makes me a better woman.
So
She's amazing.
good.
I love her so much.
Okay. And so an actual quote that you feel really embodies transparency.
So this might sound confusing, but hear me out. I love the entire quote that Marianne Williamson has in A Course in Miracles, her book about A Course in Miracles. It is A Course in Miracles. And I think Nelson Mandela often gets credit for saying it because I think he used her words in an inaugural address. And I had this entire passage literally vinyl on my wall for the last 2 houses I've been in. But the one piece I want to pull out of it from a transparency standpoint is your playing small does not serve the world. And I want the reason why you're like, wait a second, transparency, like that sounds like you're going to be like big time and you're showing up as full of yourself. Is that transparent? And I dare say yes, because here's what I believe. And I believe this about you. And I believe this about me is our greatness usually comes from our struggle. How we are able to show up and play big usually comes from the fact that we get comfortable with our shadow self. My best friend says that I'm very comfortable dancing in the darkness, and I am, because none of us are all, gumdrops and lollipops. Like we have that shadow self. And if you can start to get comfortable with that and integrate the shadow self with your ego and how you present yourself to the world, now you're not projecting yourself and projecting your fears, projecting what you don't like about yourself onto others and forcing them to wear it so that you can feel more comfortable about yourself. Like, oh, that's not me, that's you. Well, if you can embrace your shadow self and be transparent about the good, the bad, and the ugly, only then can you step into your greatness. And then you understand that your playing small does not serve the world. And playing small is ignoring and not honoring your whole self.
Amber, dang you. The first podcast where somebody makes me cry. I didn't think I'd ever cry on this podcast. Yes, and yes. Thank you. So many people deserve to hear what you just shared.
And you did it. I mean, I remember watching you at the Women's Summit as you were transparent 100% the entire time. Your whole talk was about transparency, essentially. And I just thought, what a bad mamma jamma. Because you getting up there and saying all of those things empowered every single human in that room to go, yeah, I deal with that too, but I've never said that out loud. And it allows us to then become curious, like hold out that thing that you just want to shove down. And what you did is you said, let's just put it out here. let's talk about it. Like, let's just look at it. What color is it? You know, what does it smell like? Where did this come from? Why is it doing it? What can we do to fix this? And it doesn't become like there's this hole in me or there's this broken piece of me. It is a piece of you, of your whole self. And I just felt like you so beautifully gave permission for people to examine that through your own transparency.
Thank you. All right, we're going to wrap it up before I keep crying. What's your favorite snack?
So I know this is going to sound, I don't snack. I don't have time to snack. And on top of that, I have celiac disease, and my first hospitalization, I was 4. So I always joke it's the medical kind, not the trendy kind. And then last year I got bit by a Lone Star tick. I have forest on my property, as you know, and I didn't know that this was a thing, but I have something called alpha gal now. So I cannot have any hooved animal, no red meat. And so even like if it was like turkey jerky or something like that, sometimes they add beef or pork, or like if I wanted to do chicken sausage, the casing is pork. So I'm so limited on what I can eat that if I'm going to snack, it's probably like carrots or radish medallions or something completely unsexy that nobody wants, but like literally that's all I can eat. So I just don't snack. I have really good meals with a ton of protein and drink a ton of water.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Okay. I cannot thank you enough. You are a wealth of information, and I really am so grateful for you. Thank you.
I'm grateful that you thought enough of me to have you on your fantastic show. You're making such a difference. You are a difference maker in a bright light in a pretty dark world these days.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.